Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. The show is known as PWD Allies Podcast. Check out your favorite app where you find it best suited for you. Today, the episode is going to be about love and disability, and I want to welcome my weekly panelists for joining me as usual. And we're going to dive into love and disability, the difference between love and disability. Now, to have love, well, I mean, you love yourself, but you have a disability. But can you love other people in your life while having a disability? According to the government, nope, you're not allowed to have that. So I'm going to reach, yeah, when I say they're not allowed to have that, you're not allowed to have a relationship. Unless you do, then you're going to be penalized. You're going to have just one income for two people. Yeah, so there's a problem, and age doesn't have a factor in it. Age as we get older, we get more disabilities. So when you get up to 65 years old, well, you lose your disability status, but you still can't love because then now you'll be a senior with less income. Anyway, we're going to dive into all this stuff today, and it's going to be an interesting topic for sure. I'm going to start with you, Patrick, first. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? I had a little bit of experience with this. I didn't start receiving ODSP, the Ontario Disability Program, until actually my common law relationship had ended. But during that time, I had to apply for welfare briefly. And we had only been living together for about 6 weeks. But under the law, that is common law in Ontario.
For six
So
weeks. Wow.
6 weeks. Yeah,
Wow.
as soon as you start cohabitating, you're considered common law, which is,
Wow.
that's crap. But anyways, that's what it was. So, she was working at Goodwill at the time, and I was self-employed, sort of starting to have vision issues, and they considered, both of our incomes together to determine what my eligibility was. And I know that it's not much better with common law with ODSP because, like you say, one income, that's what you get, and it's about $400 or $500 less than you would get as two single people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it would make more sense for one to rent as a roommate than to be, in a common law in the eyes of the law. But you start playing games and you could get barred from all your benefits. So it's not right the way they've set it up.
Yeah.
And it's also it's an embarrassment. Honestly, there's stigma attached to it. I mean, frankly, I would rather be working doing something, but that's not the case right now. So, when it comes to that on the online dating apps, what do you do for a living? Fuck all,
Yeah.
that doesn't go over so good. It's just
I'm disabled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next,
Yeah.
and I think there is a gender bias thing here because I don't know. I get the sense that females with disabilities are more apt to date non-disabled men than disabled men dating non-disabled females. You know what I mean? Like,
Or disabled men dating disabled females, right?
Well, I've actually.
yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Patrick. Go ahead.
I don't know about I think there's bias, in that situation too, with both these people are disabled. Because I remember hearing somebody say they want somebody to look after them. I mean, like, well, what are you gonna do? Like there's that's just not right. But that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first question that people will come out and say, well, what do you do? What do you do for a living? Well, I'm disabled. Oh, okay. Then they kind of either move on and change the topic to something else.
Well,
I'm a retired investment advisor.
You know what? I've had that question actually. What do you do? I'm disabled. I actually put that right on a profile one time, and someone said, "Well, lots of disabled people still work," and they're right. Like depending on the disability.
Right.
So, like if the government really cared, they would help us, with the vocational training and finding something else to do. But really, there is no hand up out of this poverty trap. You're stuck in it.
Well,
I get, sorry, okay, you go ahead, MJ, sorry.
Right, and one of the problems with the stigma of dating disabled people is the fact that, right, it's like if one of you is disabled or both you are disabled, or or it's like all of a sudden, she's making, we'll say, 60 grand, and you're disabled. Now you're a dependent, right?
Yep.
And the government goes and says, well, she has enough money to take care of two of you. But I'm like, well, wait a minute. Now I'm dependent on her to go and be able to go and get money for this or that or whatever else I need, or the luxuries or things that I would like to go and get. I don't go and get any supportive help for myself. Well, it's like, well, we'll help you with half a wheelchair, but that may be that.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
I'll bring that back up because that's what they do.
Yeah.
One of the partners has to be a sugar mama or sugar daddy. I mean, this is just not, it's not cool.
Yeah.
Nobody
No.
really wants to be supported by their partner, I don't think.
Well, I can,
Well, and that's where
Males particularly?
that's where autonomy comes in, right? Because autonomy should be based on what a person wants to do for themselves,
Yeah.
and the government wants to strip that away.
See, the government's job should be helping people, at least minimally, be able to go and get the foundation to go and meet or be able to elevate themselves within the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Right.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Actually, go on, and I'll pile on to that afterwards. Go on.
I mean, because there's like safety, security, and all the rest of that stuff. Well, you have to have safety and security where you live, right? And if you're unsure, then you're more likely not to go and wanting to get farther away from your stuff because, well, you might have to run home and and deal with a break-in. And our government's not doing a very good job when it comes to putting people with there's people with mental health issues that need a halfway house, right? And when I say halfway house, there's people with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and other diseases that will not manage themselves, but need a caregiver oversight situation to go and help them keep taking their medication, right?
Well, you get that once you break the law and then you're put into prison. But it's even hard to get that happening when you find someone who needs that kind of help.
That's not a criminal.
But well, no. Like once I know somebody whose son rammed a police car with their car, was charged, but not imprisoned, was fully off the meds, schizo, and the judge wouldn't do anything. The lawyer wouldn't enter a plea of temporary insanity or whatever. Needing help, not fit to stand trial, that sort of thing.
Right.
None of that happened, and it's a total failure of the system to help people who obviously need it. But what I'm saying is, if they were actually in jail, they would be getting the meds. That you take your meds,
Right. It's like there's shots that I've been reading about this, that there are, and I do know this from secondhand actually, from my mom, because she was a care aide and she worked with somebody else who was also a care aide that had a son who was schizophrenic / bipolar. And he went fucking, pardon the language, he went nuts. And he threatened to kill his father, his sister, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and other family members. Right. And the father finally said, okay, this is it. He called the cops. He told them the situation. He said, this guy's schizophrenic. Basically now he's under court order to have to go and get the shot every 3 months. Court order. Right. And what I'm saying is sometimes there's people, in the disability sphere that need more help than others.
Yeah.
And our government seemed to be peeling away all these layers of help. We used to have, what the heck was that place there? Riverview, and a bunch of other facilities in British Columbia for severely mentally disabled people or mentally unwell people that needed that control and guidance over their lives for their medication. Right. And we've taken that away and said, oh, well, they can live at home or
on the street.
Right. And what happens is, we have a system within welfare / disability. Oh, we're going to audit you. Oh, you didn't comply. We're booting you out. We're booting you out. Oh, the mentally disabled person can't comply because you start freaking them out with your deranged lunacy of demanding shit from them because their brain doesn't work that way. And then they end up on the street. We have a system that's, goes and creates these problems. you know.
But back to the main topic. It's no wonder they have those people have trouble finding someone to date.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to pile on again to what MJ is saying about the hierarchy of needs, because on yesterday's podcast I made a reference to the same kind of metaphor about these when we talk about I know today's show is about love and disability, and we'll get there, but in yesterday's show we were talking about RGI units and subsidized rents, right? And I've made the metaphor connection before of that only 10 or 12% are actually of people with disabilities are qualifying for RGI units, and the rest 88 to 90% are paying market, right? Yep. And so I kind of made this analogy of, you think of a McDonald's restaurant, hamburgers. Imagine if you walk into a McDonald's and only 12% of the time you're getting a burger. It's kind of like that, but then I realized it's even worse than that, because it's the same 12%. It's the same 12% that are getting burgers, and it's the exact same 88% or 90% that aren't getting burgers. So you're penalizing the exact same group. So there's actually a stratification. It's a stratification of like the haves and have-nots within the disability community.
Yeah, or it's like or it's like you go to McDonald's and you 10 to 12% you can have this type of burger, but the other part they can have this kind of burger.
They have the shit burger.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a fur burger.
Yeah.
You get the vegan burger. You can
But I mean that's an important difference to realize, right? Is that there is this stratification, but it's always the same 12% that is being targeted as you deserve the punishment, the 12% that you deserve the reward. 12% you deserve the reward, and the 88 to 90% you deserve the punishment. And it's always the same stratification of this pile deserves this shit, and this pile deserves good stuff over here of the RGI or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I actually pulled up a graphic of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, just for reference, so we could stay on topic on this.
Do you want me to do a screen share for you? Do you want to bring up a screen share or not?
Yeah, I can bring up a picture of it.
We can do that. Yeah. Give me 1 second. It's freaking on me. 1 sec.
We don't even meet the first level of Maslow's needs.
No, we don't.
I know.
Like we can barely get our shelter covered.
I've got the screen share enabled here now, so you can.
Okay.
It's no wonder there's so much criminality in the disabled community, from time to time, and misreporting, things like that, because they treat us like criminals. So I don't know.
Right. I mean, I bumped it up to the big size so we could all see it.
Sure.
There we go.
Right. Breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing, and sleep.
We can't really see the top though. Can you?
There you go. Self-actualization.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I expanded it to the max size here, so we could.
We'll never get to the top anyway. So
no!
Right. I want to talk. I want to cover the physiological needs. Right. It's the biggest key point that we have to talk about. I mean, we barely get good food, right? We barely, we get water, but like the quality of water we get in some cities is less than others, but the shelter that we can afford is sometimes in the most sketchiest places, the most dangerous places for a disabled person to live, because that's all we can afford, right? Then we have to buy second class and secondhand or third hand clothing from thrift shops because we can't afford to buy new clothing. $3 makes a difference. People don't realize how much $1 makes a difference to us, right? And then after all of this stress, trying to deal with a good night's sleep, it's impossible.
And it mentions sleep, and I'll just jump in there. Is that when I was working for the Disability Foundation here, and for 6 years I did, and I was helping other people with disabilities find employment. Well, that was the exact problem this one client was having, is because, you know, he had a neighbor in a BC housing complex that was threatening to kill him all the time. That was number one. So every day this guy was threatening to kill him. So that was the number one. And then number two, he had these smelly carpets that was basically giving him an insomnia, and the landlord refused to clean them. So, you know, so it's just, and so like, you know, and so if you're not sleeping, and as MJ said, you're not eating properly because you're not getting the proper support. I mean, what hope do you have to be able to, you know, function in a job if you're not eating properly, you're not sleeping properly? I mean, good luck trying to hold down a job, you know?
Well, it's not only that, because we're talking about number 3 here, and this is why I blew it up so big, because so we could all see it, especially those on the internet, watching on the stream. You know, I mean, you take a look at number 2: health, employment, property, family, social ability. Well, we can't afford, they limit us on the amount of property we can own, which that in itself creates more psychological devastation for us, because, you know, owning a house and owning a car and all the rest of that stuff is an accomplishment. And they destroy it so that we can't have these accomplishments. So once you have property, and, you know, we might not have the best of health, but once you have a property that you own, right, that you have your own property, you know, then you have, you know, the ability to go and have a station where then you can go and have a family and or employment. But we don't even get family, employment, even good health care. Then we're limited on our sociability because we're disabled, right? Because we can't own, you know, it's like, oh, you can't afford to even own a car. Owning a car is part of social ability. And a lot of people can't connect the dots here, but I'm going to connect the dots in saying that, you know, how can you have, if you can't even get number 1 and number 2 man, how could we even get to to friendship, family, intimacy, and a sense of connection?
Yeah.
If we can't even get you know, the government to help us give us that leg up as disabled people, we're never going to get to number 3. We're never going to get to number 4 and have the self-esteem that's needed and self-actualization at the top of the pyramid. I mean,
we're gonna stay in the red. We're gonna stay in the red.
This is right here is where disabled people tend to be stuck, is worrying about their physiological needs and their safety and security. And the orange, they never even have property. They never have, you know, half the time. I mean, how many people that end up disabled, their family disowns them and doesn't even want to help them out? I mean, that's another part of that happens with many people that end up disabled. Not everybody is in this situation, but some people do, right? It's like their family just goes, oh, you're disabled? Your problem, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, when we're talking about love and belonging, you know, I mean, these, you know, that's what the show is really about. This is why I really brought this in, because it ties in so well.
It does.
Into understanding these are the 3 core parts that help us get to the top 2. Without these 3, we don't have a foundation to get to have the self-esteem, the confidence for achievement, to become a unique individual, you know, the best we can, you know. And you know, and Patrick was just talking about having morality. Well, you wonder why people, like you're saying, disabled people end up becoming criminals.
Yeah.
Right?
And not that everybody does, but you know, it's an easier avenue for some. Yeah.
Yes.
And
right. So
well, you know,
this is, you know, go ahead.
Yeah, we were talking earlier too about you know, disabled people dating either able-bodied or disabled bodied, and I've actually dated both, and you know, my first wife was somebody with a disability. She was in a motorized wheelchair basically her whole life with arthrogryposis, so her mobility was fairly extremely limited, but with the help of 24/7 care aids, she was extremely able, really, because she was a very successful school teacher for about 17 years. So that was, I had my first wife for 10 years, and before she passed away. And now I have an able-bodied wife. So I've gotten both sides of the equation. But what I wanted to say is, like, when I had my first wife, because we were both disabled, and and we were both working, we were both making pretty good money, and then it was only when my son turned 1 that my wife started having health problems, and I didn't know it was going to lead to her death eventually, but she stayed alive for about four years after she developed the health problems. But because she started developing health problems, we both started to scale back. But we originally we were both making really good money. I mean, that's why we were able to afford to buy this condo. And then we scaled back because, when you become parents anyway, you kind of want to scale back. So that's when we applied for PWD. And, at that time, it's the same thing. Like we were talking about, you're combining the two incomes, where it's basically you get the one shelter amount, and then you get, a support portion, each of you. And but like I didn't really pay attention too much to that, because we still kept working, and we were making up to the max of what we were allowed at the time. So it didn't really bother me. But I could see that now, that's kind of stupid, where you're not respecting the autonomy of the individual person. And what I can say now too is now that I have an able-bodied wife, I mean, the temptation for the government, I'm sure, is to say, well, Neil's got an able-bodied wife. She must be like supporting him up the yin yang, and the exact opposite is true. Like, I am supporting her 100% financially, but like, it's not that I care, but that's the actual fact. And I wish, my point of saying all this is, I wish the governments would realize that just because you get married to somebody, it's not necessarily strictly for financial reasons. I mean, that could be one reason, but but honestly, the reason I got married both times, to my disabled wife and my able-bodied wife, it's the exact same reason for both of them, is because you fall in love with the person. It's you want to be with the person because you fall in love with them. You want to have that connection to them. It's not about wanting to support each other financially. Like, that's the least, that's the furthest thing from your mind at the time when you get into love with somebody. It's like, well, I'm gonna financially support that person. I mean, yeah, that's true, but that's not in the realm of what you're thinking about. Like, the only thing that I think about for, again, both my wives is, like, I wanted to marry both my wives because I love both of them, and they are an emotional, physiological, psychological, whatever support. You can go on and on and on. That is why you marry somebody, and that's the same for, I mean, we'll say maybe 5% of the population out there will say, I'm getting married because I like my sugar daddy, or I like my sugar mama. But for the rest of the 95% of us, the reason why we get married is because we freaking love the person. That's the only reason why. That's the only reason why we get married, is because you freaking love the person, and who cares whether they're going to financially support us? Because I can tell you, especially in this case where I have an able-bodied wife, she is not supporting me. I am supporting her. But again, I don't care. I love her. And it's not about the fact that she's able-bodied, she should be supporting me. That's not the issue. She's giving me the emotional, psychological support, and that's enough for me. That's enough. And that's enough for most people.
Neil,
that's enough for most
if it was on the other foot, I mean, we still have, gender roles for the most part. How would you feel if you were totally dependent on your wife for all financial matters?
I would hate it.
Bother you?
It would bother me for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
And
what
I
that's
don't know if it's just a guy thing, or I mean, because I would feel the same. I would not
yeah,
like that.
that would
Um,
but well, and I mean
Well,
I can give a bit more context. The reason why she's not supporting me is not because she's being a jerk. It's because, you know, she's from the Philippines and
mhm.
she has financial obligations back at home in the Philippines. So
Yep,
she's supporting a shitload of family back in the
yep.
Philippines. So I mean, I don't want
That's
I
normal. That's
it's it
normal with the immigrant community,
it,
actually.
it
A lot.
it's very normal, right? And I don't want to
Yeah,
necessarily get all into my particulars, but
Yeah.
that is
see,
why I'm supporting her.
see,
Well, you
isn't
see,
it
and
just
that's yeah, and I mean there are the kind of an add-on to that, and that's kind of why when I hear government coming out with these announcements of, well, we're building housing under BC Housing in British Columbia, BC Housing, nonprofits, for-profit sector, but under the BC Housing umbrella. Again, and now it's like saying, well, hey, you want cheaper housing? Here, we're building housing, but we're not going to deal with corporate landlords. I mean, majority of PWD live in market housing, right? They live in either a privately owned building by a corporate, a REIT, and yeah, I get it. Some REITs take advantage of the market as much as the market will bear. They're going to keep cranking the rent up. But again, it should be based on autonomy. It should be based on that individual. They want to live in that sector, just get raised the goddamn rates. Like, we give them enough money so they can live in the sector they want. But no, you want BC Housing or maybe another province, they call it different providers. But now, again, now you're going to follow under their guidelines. I call it government thumb housing. And I have nothing wrong with housing getting built. I'll make that very clear. Housing needs to get built across the country. Again, give the PWD options of where do you want to live? Okay, without all the stigma attached to it, like saying, okay, well, if you want to live in BC housing, well, need to follow our policies. And the policies state that to PWD, if they're just friends or roommates, okay, as soon as you move into there, you need to be under one file, one income.
yep, yep.
And
It's
so
wrong.
again, that basically strips them of their autonomy of what their own self being. And again, now you're dependent on one person of one income.
right.
And you know
And then you're also
what's
dependent
mess?
on another person you might not be involved with, or and all of a
Exactly.
sudden
Yeah.
things go wrong. It's
Yeah.
like all
Well,
of a sudden,
that's it exactly. I
Yeah.
know of a couple that are married now, but um, for the last bunch of years, they've only been filing one tax return because only one of them gets an income. And
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
file null returns for the other, but that's wrong,
It,
because they're both, technically getting money. And the other thing is when you have to undo that, how does that work? Nobody
well, you
talks
see,
about.
well, one of my neighbors, though, Patrick, I'm glad you mentioned that because one of my neighbors lives in a building owned by the same company, a couple doors down from here, and
Okay.
had left her roommate, and she left, like her roommate left her, but the
Okay.
government said, oh, well, you're together because the law states that the same sex individual. I mean, it's common law because I
Yep.
mean,
Yep.
and so she left because she had to go and actually help her family out. Well, now
Mm.
they were in RGI housing originally. Well, now she had to go and prove to the government that they're not living together anymore. And why is that? Why did the person leave? All the questions. Now they had to
Yep.
apply for disability again from scratch because they're under one file. Well, now it became too old of the file, so they had to go and find a doctor to get reassessed to prove that. I mean, yeah, what a gong show.
see,
Wouldn't
and
it be
this is
simpler? Wouldn't it be simpler just to pay us all one rate and live with who you want? Who cares?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
well, this is
whose business is it? It's nobody's business,
Mhm.
really. It shouldn't
see,
be.
and
I mean, Trudeau Senior said he doesn't care who sleeps with who. So,
Yeah.
what the hell? Anyways,
right, and
sorry,
this is
MJ.
where universally available basic income comes in because it's not based on a family unit; it's based on the individual,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, I mean, I've been working on the idea of this, and I'm at one page in a document, just in Word, just writing out how it's going to be organized in my
Mm-hmm.
thoughts and what's going to be moved into it, what's going to be eliminated. I mean, and how much people fail to understand that. I mean, I'll bet you anything. If you were to go and say to somebody that lives on a First Nations reserve, that's having to deal with all of that gong show, and say to them, you could live anywhere you want, and here's $4,000 a month. You just have to go and give up all the bullshit of the Indian Act. Would you do it? Would you choose that? Right? Would you make that choice for yourself? Now, the thing is it's not trying to say, well, we're stripping you of being who you are. Well, what I'm trying to say is this degenerate piece of legislation called the Indian Act should not exist in 2024, right? And that's one of the things that I'm looking at is the bigger picture with what I've been writing on all this idea is it's inclusive to everybody that wants to choose to be part of this and take it, and basically the idea is saying, look, let's stop playing these discriminatory games of saying, oh, you're less than, or you're this, or you're that, or oh, you're living with another disabled person. You only deserve one amount for the rent.
Right? Yeah, we're going to take a quarter off. Yeah,
we're going to take a quarter of your money away. No, you get X amount of money. It's like in my calculation, I'm at $4,000 because I'm calculating for 2030.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that's how far ahead I'm calculating right now. We're in 2024 and I'm calculating that far ahead for minimal requirement living expenses. That's not a joke, right?
Yeah.
That's how far ahead I'm calculating. Even if this was to 2028 in 4 years, right now we need at least $2,000 per individual in a home to live, right?
Oh yeah, minimum
at least, right? And $4,000 in 4 years, because the way they keep going here, I mean, I don't know how to explain. I don't want to get into the minutia of that.
Yeah,
I'm looking at right. I'm looking at the cost of living, the depreciation of the dollar, and the inflation, and all the rest of this stuff, all at the same time, and going, what is it going to be in 4 years if the current status quo of things going, and if the federal carbon tax stays the same, and it gets to $250 a ton to where they wanted to get it. I think somebody said they want to take it all the way up to 400. Now,
that's kind of what I heard too. Yeah.
Right now, let's be realistic with all of this. That's just going to make more of us homeless that are disabled. This carbon tax, the people don't realize how regressive it is and how it's actually hurting seniors and disabled more than most other people. And I'm looking at what would it take to solve these problems while getting rid of these taxes and rules and regulations to get rid of the stuff that's impeding society. I mean, and the reason why it's universally available versus universal basic is I believe the choice should be there. If you need it, take it. If all of a sudden you get injured on the job, and we'll say that you're a high tension wire, the heavy duty electrician that's working in 100 kilovolt wires, and you lose, your arms or an arm or whatever, and you become paralyzed or permanently disabled. And as a matter of fact, I know that of an individual that did have that happen and has full care, but he's covered through his employment currently until he turns 65. But that disappears. So all of this stuff, when you take a look at, or you get into a car accident and, all of a sudden you're going to be off for 6 months while you recuperate, right?
Or longer.
Or longer, right? This is where the choice to be able to say, okay, I need this money. I'm not working, right? Yeah. Instead of having to go through fighting with WCB, going through these people that go and say, bend over, do what I'm talking about. The old test where you bend over, do your knees, stretch up, and all the rest of that stuff. Oh, you're good to go back to work. And that's really what what they did for years to say, oh, you're good enough to go back to work. But now then they have their doctors to try to disprove your doctors, which wastes more of our tax dollars to try to prove I'm disabled and I'm broken and I can't work. Oh, no, our doctors say it's not as bad as you're making it out to be. But the x-rays are read the same, right? Or read differently by different technicians. They play these games within our system to go and say, hey, you're not worthy enough because you're not this and you're not that. And my thing is that stigmatism and that discrimination is part of the biggest problems that we're facing, not just for the able or disabled people, but for the able body that will become disabled or either over time or by no fault of their own.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
right.
That's why I always say, again, like I always bang that drum basically about RGI. Like I mean, eventually people should be able to have their own home. I mean, and I mean, rent to own, like have your own home. But in the meantime, give everybody RGI, but based on the individual, not family income, because
exactly.
money wise, that way, if something goes sideways or maybe a person's circumstances changes, is they still always are going to have a home, right? Get people in homes, not homeless.
Well, exactly. Instead of renting, we should be doing ownership.
Yeah.
Thinking back to the relationship thing, something that comes to mind to me is pet ownership, and just how much animals add to our lives.
Yeah.
And like there's a homelessness problem for animals as well. Like especially res dogs. Like up north, people go up north and they rescue res puppies. They're running wild sometimes, and I wonder why, like here in Ontario, the SPCA doesn't kind of foster with people that are able enough to look after an animal, like a dog, cat, whatever. Because
pets
they
are
can give
family.
you a lot. They can give you a lot, like an animal.
Well, pets are family. Yeah, I mean, they're part of. They're an extension of family. I mean, they are. I grew up with pets. I mean, oh my gosh, my mom had 12 cats and 2 dogs, and she had a pot-bellied pig and I mean, family pig, and it could barely walk. But I mean, chickens, ducks. I mean, you name it. I mean, those were her family. Yeah. So when it comes down to breaking up the family, it really becomes a problem. And like I've said it before on the podcast, and now I'll say it again. I mean, the government wants to listen to it. I'll give you a good example about breaking up families when it comes to like having subsidized housing. My mom lived in her own house and she rented it. Well, I mean, she called it her house, but she wanted to do a rent to own. Unfortunately, the owner decided that he was aging and his family was going to take care of the house after his passing. And he passed, but I guess the daughters decided something different needed to happen going forward. So she lost her home. She lost her home. But before then, I had moved. I had moved out eventually, but I was still living with her. My brother was still living with us. My mom. It came to a point of time in her life as we all get older, right? We all get older, and we get different ailments. My mom had different disabilities. They weren't diagnosed at the time. However, she was told by a neighbor to go and apply for SAFERS. Right, a seniors affordable. It's like the supplements that they get in BC. I always get that name mixed up. I should have it written down. But anyways, it's a senior supplement. People that are on low income, like single mothers, single fathers, they can get a rental assistance program. They can get it too. PWD, though, unfortunately, they don't get that. They get the shelter portion. So and they're excluded out of that part of that pyramid. And so my mom, we used to go to a worker, and the worker would actually be the same worker I had at the time because they handled senior supplements, and the same worker I had for PWD. And I asked, and I didn't know a lot how it all worked back then. I just said, so why don't I get that? Like, how come I can't get this supplement like my mom is going to be getting? Well, because you get the shelter portion. Right. So if I move out, is that going to be enough to pay for market rent? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, our government takes care of our citizens. Oh, okay. Right. And so my mom goes, well, there you go. There's your answer. I go, and what happens if they don't? Brent, don't ask so many questions. They're going to take care of you. I go, no, something seems off here. And so I said, okay, but what happens if I get a rate increase? Oh, yeah, you'll be fine. Your mom will be fine. You'll be fine. And what about my brother? Be fine. What happened here, long story short, is they have a ceiling. They have a ceiling of income based on family. And if your income in that family exceeds that income, one of you has to move out because you cannot exceed that income for a family unit. So it came to a point where my brother had his own business. He was a professional painter, and so he painted apartment buildings, houses. I mean, you name it. He'd get me to drop down some towels down there so he could paint and stuff. So he taught me how to do this and that. And of course, he used to yell at me, "No, there! Oh, damn it! Now it's on the floor." So he had to get some stripper and strip it off there. I'm like, "Oops, sorry, my hand and eye coordination. I couldn't line it up properly," and he got frustrated with me, so I got to go home. But anyway, long story short, he'd come home, and my mom had some sad news for him that same day. Said, well, she had got a notice by the government saying that the income exceeded the amount that for a household. So one of us was going to have to move. So my mom had a meeting with them, and they said, your son, one of you is going to have to move. Otherwise, you're going to lose your senior supplement. So my brother had to move. Well, my mom said, well, Brent needs to stay with me because she needs to take care of my needs for my disability also. And long story short on that. So yeah, it was sad, right? And it shouldn't come down to that. And that's why I advocate of say that, yeah, it needs to be based on the individual, not the household, because, a lot of PWD, I mean, sure, we all want cheaper housing, but if the government figures that, hey, just throw them all into RGI, but based on a family unit, now you're going to get screwed up either that way or relationship wise. And even if you're like we said, Patrick, even if a person isn't in a relationship, now the government will say, oh, no, one file relationship. Yeah. That's it, right?
Yeah. I just wanted to
that's my rant.
I just wanted to table something related to stigma again. If we go back to my own experience with my first wife who was disabled, I talk about this a lot in my book too, and I don't often plug my book, but if there's people out there that are interested in learning about what it's like to dating my dating life and that, like, love and relationships, I cover that in the book. So it's very personable or personal, but again, I don't really plug my book that much, but I'm very honest in the book, so I talk about the good and the bad. But what I was going to say about my first wife is that we both, like, when I met her, she was like, I don't want to ever, she never really wanted to date somebody with a disability because she knew it was a hard thing to date another person with a disability. And I was the same, right? It's like, I know how hard it is to have a disability. So why would I want to take on somebody else's disability, right? We were both the same, but in spite of that, we both fell in love with each other anyway. But what I was going to say was when we kind of compared notes about our dating life, one of the stories that she would share with me is that she had a lot of she would date a lot of able-bodied people, early on in her dating life, and she would frequently have guys tell her, "Wow, you're really beautiful. It's too bad that you're disabled." Like, just they would blurt that out right to her face. You're really beautiful. It's too bad you're just disabled, right? And I would kind of get the same thing too. It's like, I would go on these dates, and it's like, yeah, it's going pretty good, but I don't think I can handle a guy with a disability. Sorry, and but that's kind of a common thing. So again, we're talking about stigma, right? So it, like in my case, again, with my first wife, the fact that we both didn't want to marry anybody that had a disability because we knew it was hard, yet in actual fact it worked out to be great because you both have that understanding of how hard it is, so you kind of accept each other for flaws and all of how hard it is, like what a shit show it is sometimes, and you give each other more grace that way too. So I just kind of wanted to cover that topic, and if anybody's kind of come across that as well.
I actually came across something similar, but a little bit different. This is going to probably blow your mind. I had to go every two, well, it was every 3 years now. But it was doctor had recommended I go every 2 years just for an annual checkup for my ophthalmologist. Sometimes I couldn't, see an ophthalmologist, so I had to see an optometrist. I used to have an eye doctor who knew my eye condition inside out, but he went back to Ontario for a while to study. Yeah, she went to the University of Waterloo, and so he was an instructor there, and he was awesome. He was my favorite eye doctor. He knew my eye condition inside out, and anyway, I lost touch with him, and so he ended up being back in my own hometown in Langley. And and I came across him one day. I'm thinking, I saw a clinic there. Oh my gosh, he's there. He's in practice again. And then he disappeared again. Then he went back to Surrey. Then he was back in Langley. Anyway, I ended up, long story short, I ended up seeing a different doctor because he wasn't accepting any patients. Like he had full amount of patients at his roster. So I mean, but I stayed in contact. I'm like, hey, how's it going? Blah blah. So I saw a different eye doctor, and the other eye doctor I saw was, it's too bad, Brent, that you have your eye condition. You could do wonders in your life. You could drive a bus. I mean, you seem to love people, be a tour guide, and drive a bus or drive a car. If you really put your mind to it, you could do anything because, you could just get your eye condition corrected with laser surgery. Have you ever thought of that? I go, my eye condition can't be corrected through laser surgery. I had it from birth. So it's a hereditary condition. Oh, I don't know a lot about your eye condition, but I'm sure that my colleagues, we could send you for consultation. I go, you know what? I got out of the chair with doing an eye test. I got up and he had this machine, they fit right up to your eyes. I got the machine. I literally pushed it aside. I got out of the chair. You know what? Thank you. Have a great day.
Right.
And good luck. I said, don't screw over other patients, by the way. I walked out of the office.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was like total ableism, and it was like degrading of saying, oh, I'm sorry that you're disabled, but hey, you know what? You can overcome it.
You would be much better undisabled. Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't believe how many.
Well, I said, you're lucky that I'm not going to do a lawsuit against you, right? I said, it's a waste of my time. I walked out. I probably could have.
You wouldn't believe how many people have told me I could cure my diabetes. I have type 1. Type 1. That is genetic. It's it's autoimmune. You can't do anything about it. It's managed by insulin. I've had people tell me diet and exercise and you get rid of your diabetes. And they mean well.
No.
They mean well.
Sonia can vouch for that one. Sonia can vouch for that one.
Diet and exercise only go so far when you're diabetic, because that
does nothing if you're type 1.
Right.
Does nothing if you're type 1.
It'll get you into shape, right? Fine and dandy. But you're still going to be taking the insulin shots. You're still going to be poking yourself with a needle. It doesn't
I've had
just
people
go
tell
away.
me I don't need that if I do the exercise. Come on.
Oh man.
It's like the amount of delusion that we have.
It's not just.
Patrick and I should do a show on.
Yeah, Sonia said she should do a show, Neil, regarding diabetes. Actually, you know what? Let's do that.
I think that'd be
add
good.
that to the list. I added one to the list the other day.
Yeah.
I think that would be great. I think she should do a show with you, and then she'll be in the driver's seat, and I'll be sitting where she is sitting.
Yeah.
Patrick,
well, you know what? A lot of people
in.
don't recognize the difference between the types of diabetes. I guess there just isn't enough knowledge about it out there, or
deliberate ignorance, Patrick.
There's a deliberate out there too.
I've put on a lot of weight in the last few years.
Once a week.
I put on a lot of weight in the last few years, so they're talking about putting me on Ozempic, but it's not for type 2. It's because it can help. Yeah.
I tried it and it made me so sick.
Yeah. Hey Neil, why don't we schedule? Neil, what is your Thursday like? I know we're actually on air right now.
Are we gonna do 4 shows in 1 week?
Well,
are you trying to kill me, Brent?
No, what I'm thinking is maybe like a half-hour show with Sonia and just talk about diabetes stuff with you, Patrick, as a guest.
We could.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it after the show.
Don't have to rush it. We can do it in a couple of weeks. When you got a lighter schedule.
It doesn't have to be right away.
Yeah, it's just there's a new
Let's not burn ourselves out.
there's a new method coming out that we saw in the news that it was about for type 1 and
Type 2.
and type 2. But Sonia will talk about that because she heard the news. It was on this morning. Yeah.
Well, they're no longer allowed to advertise direct to consumer here in Ontario or in Canada, I believe, for meds. Like you might have seen the commercials where they talk about a drug. They don't tell you anything about what it does. Like, ask your doctor about Contrave, like what the hell's Contrave? They don't even say ask your doctor anymore. They just say the name of the drug.
Well, there was this one med that Sonia took, and it was prescribed by her doctor. Oh, take this. She was ill, very. And then the pharmacist said, "Oh, well, maybe just change the dosage. Maybe it was just too much." She goes, "No, thanks. No, thanks."
Yeah, no. Yeah.
I mean, I had to almost call emergency. Like it got to a point where I had to call a nurse's hotline. Like she was just call 911. I'm like, no, Brent, don't do that unless you really have to. And so I called a nurse's hotline, and is she conscious? Yeah, anyway, the fact is that she was really ill, like very ill, and her system just did not want to deal with it.
It seems to either work or not, depending on the person,
Can we bounce off on this?
Yeah.
Can we bounce off on this? That's another thing that doctors like to do with us disabled people is find new drugs to give us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like what are we? What
guinea pigs?
What is this? Like this
we're
is
the human trials.
Exactly. What are they? Human trials? No, I mean this is where I find doctors to figure, oh, well, there's got to be a pill for something. Well, let's go. It's like, I mean, if people forget that Viagra was never actually intended to be Viagra, it was supposed to be for something else. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So this is what, now we've got drugs being used for off-brand purposes that are for something else. And it's like, well, why did they prescribe it? Right.
Then the other question that came in, I still remember the nurse on the phone and sir, okay, so who am I speaking with? I go, well, I'm Brent. Okay, Brent. So what is your relationship to Sonia? I go, I'm her roommate. You're her roommate. Oh, okay. And I thought, okay, why are you asking that question? Like, you don't need to be asking like personal information here. And I go, yeah, okay. And how long have you known Sonia for? I go, I've known Sonia for years, but I've been her roommate. I said for a short period of time. Oh, I see. And I'm thinking, okay, like, are you typing this stuff in? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like documenting this stuff down. And it's like, what the heck? I thought like, that's just, again, love and disability. You know what I mean? Like it's, again, it's, I want people to understand, like, I want people to have housing, have RGI housing, but like, again, it has to be based on the individual, and have them select what kind of housing do they want? Do they want to still live in the neighborhood that they live in, that they want to be in? Do they want to have to move to a different community because the government says, well, we're building this housing. Do you want it or not? It's like going to a candy store, like a little kid. Do you want this or not? You know what I mean?
That is right. Here's, this is my thing. It's like the government says, we're building brand new 15-minute cities. Everyone can get UBI if they live there. But we'll never own anything. You'll always be paying rent, and everything will be very convenient for you. Right? This is what they're doing. What it seems like our system wants to do is like, let's move all of these people that are financially dependent on the system to one location and get them out of the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Here's an interesting thing. I posted this on my Facebook story on Facebook. I think maybe Brent, you saw it, about the guy from Manitoba. If you're ill in Manitoba, they can literally take over your life. They can literally put you into a guardianship situation where you have no control of your money. And that's what the two guys were talking about. If anybody watched that story, it came off TikTok from an interview done, I guess, on a story that was done in Manitoba about some people that the province seemed fit to absolutely take guardianship over them, and they would have to like grovel for money and stuff. Like they were on a budget of $100 and something a week or something for groceries and everything. Like
Well, Ellen, it's like,
sorry, I gotta leave it, Manitoba.
No, Ellen, it's all good. Because like when I referred about housing, like, and it kind of stems into like love and disability, because like our government in BC came out with the government news article this morning, and there's building a whole bunch of housing in the biggest city in Canada, Surrey, British Columbia. They call it the biggest city because it's the based on square footage, like the geographical realm of it. So a fastest growing community, and that's great. I applaud the government. They build more housing, right? That's awesome. We need more housing. Yeah, and I don't think anyone disagrees that we don't need more housing across the country. But
if you're coming from the U.S.,
some of it's based on shelter. Some of it's based on shelter, your current shelter rate. Some are based on 30% of your income. And then there's other ones who have, maybe a little bit higher income. So it's all these tier systems. And the part that
again. Yeah.
And the part that bothers me is that if it's based on 30% of your income, it's going to be based on the family income, right? There's that other problem. Now, if it's based on the shelter, regardless if it's shelter or family, if you get two people, PWD, move into one place, there's going to be that problem again. See, so they're not talking about.
Brent, I hear what you're saying. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
Right. I mean, about 15 to 20 programs ago, Ellen was mentioning about living in Toronto and how there's many towers in Toronto that are completely dark.
Yeah.
That nobody lives in because they're owned by foreigners that don't live here. And all they're doing is docking their money in our real estate. Now, when we talk about the shortage of housing, there is no actual shortage of housing. It's the fact that we allow foreigners to come here and dock their money into our condos and apartment buildings and all the rest of this stuff. And basically, they'll buy these places up and they leave it empty. They don't rent it out at all, right? Because they don't want to depreciate the value, right? All they want to do is hold it to increase their ROI, and basically so they can wash their foreign money and put it somewhere else. Right.
Well, frankly, I don't blame them for not wanting to rent, because the as a landlord, it's not fun.
No, it's not.
If you have to get rid of somebody who's not paying, it can take 6 months to get and if you're just a mom and pop that owns a second unit or whatever, that can kill you. You depend on that for your mortgage. So I get why some people, but you're right. Like it's the corporate landlords, I think, that are the problem.
Right. The other part. Sorry. That's the other thing I was going to say is corporations buying up single family homes, condos, and mobile homes and so forth, and then jacking up the rents to say a lot.
Yeah.
Now you're frozen, just like
we're left in the dark again.
He was frozen. He was frozen. Fine.
You were like Olaf for a moment there.
But, I mean, we talk about corporate landlords. Like, I mean, I rent in a corporate landlord place here. I mean, a lot of the tenants inside the building, we all talk back and forth. And the thing is, nothing gets done. Nothing gets done. Do I appreciate having a roof over my head? Absolutely. Well, Brent, you guys have the cheapest rent around compared to everywhere else. I go, yeah, but you get what you pay for, right? I mean, it's not a dive, but we have new tenants who live above us now, and the kind of flooring that that is in the unit, our flooring is actually in better shape than their flooring upstairs, and our floor is not the best. It's laminate flooring. It's old laminate flooring, and of course, as the weather changes, it heats up, and when it heats up, guess what? It starts creaking more.
It gets tacky.
Well, and we got these new tenants upstairs, and they walk super heavy on their feet, like deliberately super heavy on their feet. And so when they creak around, it's just like, thank gosh they're not doing it now because I'm doing my show. But it's later at nighttime, right? It is frustrating. But is it enough to up and move? Because we know that if we up and move, we're going to be paying higher basic rent, and the government didn't give a rate increase this year because they chose not to do that. I don't know why. Okay, go a year, skip a year, but hey, we got more to do.
But hey, Brent? The one of the problems we face with welfare, disability, and many benefit programs, actually all the benefit programs, quite literally, is they don't follow the COLA, and that's the cost of living allowance. So when they go and change, like they've got the minimum wage using COLA, which is how much should it be increased? Well, our rates aren't subject to that, right?
No,
and our rates should be, right?
but you can't even survive on a minimum wage.
No, you can't.
No.
Like a full-time or three full-time, three
I
part-time,
want I'd like to do a petition that just getting back to that more we can do. That every politician that says more we can do faces a $1,000 fine that day, and it has to go to social services.
Well, see, here's the thing: is I don't know if you guys ever watched. I can't remember which show it was on. It was one of our many investigative shows that we've had in Canada here, and they did a thing about the Mormon Church, and they dropped one year $100 million from people they collected in tithing into Brigham Young University down the States. They moved $100 million. Now that's $100 million that didn't go to help any of their own parishioners that donated to their church that might have needed financial support. $100 million that didn't go to help their own parishioners across this nation. That's a good portion of money that they could have helped out a lot of people with, but they didn't. See, and now you want to talk about how we fund UBI? Well, there's a good look at it, right? You don't want to go and we'll tithe from you 10%. How about that? I'm sorry, but when it comes to solving these problems, to give us this mobility and this this hand to go and say, okay, now I can have X amount of money coming in. I can afford to have a relationship. I'm not going to be stigmatized because everyone can get UBI or UABI, and it's a choice, right? And it would give me a chance to be able to go and start a home business or whatever business. Then I wouldn't need this money, right?
Yeah, MJ, like on did you hear in the news there was some bureaucrat in British Columbia making $711,000. $711,000, and now we got the premier of British Columbia. He's got his eyes going, we're gonna have to now look into this. Like, no, I mean that's just one example of all these bureaucrats making these top dollars, and now we got that wastewater issue going on there of these big tanks of it's overvalued of almost $4 billion, and it actually original cost was $700,000. It's now ballooned up 4 times, and they want everybody in Metro Vancouver households to basically pay for this. Meanwhile, you got these top ones in charge of it, guys making $711,000. Like, where's their accountability here? All that money, it doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
I'm glad you're mentioning that, Brent, because one thing I'm thinking is there an upper limit when you're in rent guarantee income? Should there be an upper limit to what anybody in the household can make? Because you're mentioning about your brother, and I'm just thinking, if you had somebody who's making $100,000 a year, should they be in rent guarantee income? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like it kind of it affects the actual, I guess, eligibility for the actual
and availability for people who really need it. That's what I mean.
What I'm wondering. Everyone talks about accountability, and I would like to share something. And I was talking about this in a space earlier today on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. And this is a quote from 1973 from a Supreme Court case in Canada. And this is something that people need to understand. And I'm going to share this because I want people to be able to read this. I'm hoping we can all see this on the screen. And it says, it is the essence of our parliamentary system of government, because this comes from the 1973 Supreme Court case of Roman Corp versus Hudson's Bay Oil and Gas. Okay. And it's the essence of our parliamentary system of government that our elected representatives should be able to perform their duties courageously and resolutely in what they consider to be in the best interest of Canada, free from any worry of being called to account anywhere except in Parliament. Now, what does this mean? This means that our MLAs, our city council, and our federal government have zero accountability to us. So
lie, cheat, and steal as long as you get it done.
So when we talk about accountability, here's an example. There was a court case between Wilton Littlechild and people in Alberta where he was an MP back in 88 I believe it was 88 when the GST came in. He said he would vote against the GST.
Oh, yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And people in his riding went and took him to court. They lost because that quote from the Supreme Court from that case was used against them. And it shows us that this system has zero accountability, which is why I started to come to realize that maybe, just maybe, that, you know, all of us disabled people need to become a little more activated, more organized, you know, and possibly consider, okay, if this is how the system works, then maybe we should embrace this system and do something about it and become a political party, or make a political party, or take over a political party, right? What options are you giving us, people?
Exactly.
Let's ask the government, what options do you give us when there's no accountability? And Brent, didn't you say on the last show that we did a panel on that the NDP considered us the last priority on their list?
That was me.
Yep.
That
was
me.
Neil?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neil.
But there was something that was said. There was something that was actually said in our parliament in British Columbia, and it was mentioned that no one wants to deal with poverty.
That's another one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that
Exactly.
actually came from our finance minister. When that was said, I was like, okay, well, you know what? Then we're going to have to make a decision for all disabled people across the country and unite in one way or another, come together. And okay, because nobody wants to deal with poverty, well, then we'll
deal with it.
Yeah, we'll deal with it then. Yeah.
Right. And that's where I'm sitting here questioning, you know, like, we're talking about being able to have a relationship. Well, no, you know, okay, you want to keep the status quo, then basically you're saying that disabled people don't deserve a relationship. You know, you hate, our government seems to hate disabled people.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, we all get disabled one way or another in life. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Life. It's part of reality.
You know, you could be walking down the stairs, fall down, break a hip, break your back, and you could become disabled. And you were able 20 minutes ago. You could go and be walking across the street, get hit by a car, and get your back broken, become disabled. You were able a moment ago. You know, but here's the thing, is, I mean, I can't remember who said it, whether it's either you, Neil, or Brent, or one of the other guests on the many panels said that when it comes to becoming disabled, when people become disabled, they never realize how screwed up the system really is towards disabled people.
You don't care about it until it affects you, really.
Exactly.
You know?
I might have said that, but I think somebody else said that too.
Well,
but
and you know, to bring it back to the love and disability thing, you know, what message does that send if our own governments are saying basically that if you're disabled, you're not worthy of love and relationship, and you know, we should just, even if you take the love part out of the equation, I mean, there's a lot of people that have disability, and I mean, I can even say, just offer myself in as example, like, I give a lot of what do you want to say, like psychological advice or you know, like to my friends. Like, I have one friend, I've kind of vaguely mentioned him a couple of times. You know, he's going through a lot of, like, a really hard time with his aging mother. She's in you know, a home now, like a nursing home, and it's driving him nuts. Like, he's having a really hard time with that change and adjustment, and I'm giving him like a shitload of just emotional support, right?
Yeah, okay.
And I mean, again, I'm just offering myself up as an example, but I know a lot of disabled people out there that are giving a lot of their emotional support and help to a lot of ABs out there.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? It's like the government doesn't care. It's like they don't, you know, like, and maybe I'm getting a little off topic, but I mean, you know, like, I'm a father to a 15-year-old son now. I mean, for all we know, my son could grow up to be the person that cures cancer.
Yeah, you just never know.
And it's like, you know, it's just like, I wish the government would kind of see the value for disabled people, rather than like putting us all in the discard pile. Well, you're not giving any there's no value added according according to them, it's like, well, you're not giving any value added anything, Neil or MJ or Ellen or whatever, right?
I think the problem is that we're in 2024 and we've gone through the whole Black Lives Matter, the YouTube movement, and all this during the pandemic. And what it really boils down to is we still have the social stigma of disabled people belong in institutions. I'm not saying they do. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So when you have someone that's a taxpayer, they're going, I'm not paying for these people to sit home on their PS4s or whatever. You still have that stigma.
Yeah. Because it doesn't.
I cannot tell you how many teams have had people say, "Why aren't you living with your family? Why aren't they taking care of you? Why is it my problem?"
But you notice one thing though, Ellen, is that during the pandemic, some of the same individuals would say that, and then all of a sudden their whole life got turned upside down, and they seem to understand that what disabled people are going through, and then as soon as things changed, it's like back to the same back to regular programming. Yeah.
We're not your friend, but we're not your enemy either at the moment.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what happens in their life, then they don't understand, I guess, or doesn't affect them.
My brother-in-law has long-term COVID. I mean, he was like at death's door, and he's very God. What's the word I'm looking for?
God-fearing.
God-fearing. He's very into his church. He's very hardcore Christian. And like he said some things to me, I won't repeat them, but let's just say that his personal opinion, without my sister in earshot, came out of how he feels about me as a family member, and a disabled person.
Seems like you have very bad examples of Christians out there, Ellen. Too bad.
Unfortunately, there are too many.
I'm just saying, he's not the only one that has come across this. Between you and me, I think you should be living in a care home or a group home or somewhere out of where I can't see you. That's been the narrative I've experienced.
As long as he didn't say live in a cage or something like that. Geez, that would be
right. This is that thinking. I'm trying to be kind of not to lose my mind and start cursing my mind self here, just cursing like a sailor, and trying to be a little professional and say that this type of
I hear you on that one.
Thinking and this type of behavior gets ingrained in people. It's like you only have value if you work. In a way, it's kind of like it almost feels like people are stuck with that whole thinking of work will make me free.
I think at the same time, we were just talking earlier about how some people need a care home. Like the mentally ill sometimes need that help. And where I live, there used to be a community actually for people that were mentally challenged. It was a community called Edgar, and they closed it down because it had asbestos poisoning. But they also closed it down around the time that they introduced ODSP, and they got rid of care homes for people that needed them. So all of a sudden people were homeless, and they got the money, but they didn't know how to manage it. It was terrible. So
instead asbestos get them, make them homeless, and then that'll get them in that way anyway.
Well, yeah, it's just, I think there's a balance between, most of us need freedom and everything, but some need more care than others. That's all.
Right, and like a halfway house. Well, not a halfway house, but it's kind of like a
group homes,
like a group home, or kind of like when you talk about healthcare, it's like there's independent living, and then there's like
kind of a community based, or like a
it's not
assisted living.
Assisted living,
supported independent living.
Well, we're not in don't need assisted living just yet. We just need semi-assisted living for something.
Just somebody check in on you once in a while, make sure you're still breathing.
Right, exactly. And some other people need that full assisted living in a care home, where they need somebody to go and help them. Have you had a shower? Have you had breakfast? Have you done this? Because their mind just completely forgets that they've not done these things. And for some people, they have these problems and they need that help. And these homes were taken away.
Yeah.
I know a Canadian mental health worker who actually they're not allowed to ask people if they've had a shower recently.
Oh, wow.
And it's pretty bad. Even doctors here, people are getting infections and things that would be resolved if they were just clean themselves. But the
Yeah.
doctors don't say anything. Like, it's bad. And they're afraid of offending people, and they just plug their nose, I guess. I don't know. It's bad though.
What was that song called there, Neil? Was it from the Beatles? Was it Love Me Too?
Yeah.
Love me do. You know I love you.
Love you. Yeah.
I'll always be true.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is where it's like we don't, for those of us that don't need the assisted living, we don't need the semi-assisted living, we don't need the support programs, for the rest of us that don't need that extra help. They make it even more difficult for us to go and, like, we have the Maslow's hierarchy, the bottom 3 rows. We don't even get to past the first row, maybe the second row, being disabled and being on disability. And this is where, if you can't even get those first 2 met, you're never going to get the 3rd row where you can go and have a relationship, you can fall in love, and so forth. And this is where what we're really talking about is the government's deliberate lack of support and funding, or whatever it is, to give us that ability to make those independent decisions for ourselves, but they make it so that when we try to strive to get ahead in any way, shape, or form, even though we're disabled, they hold us back.
Yeah, they want to
kick it. I just thought I should mention, just speaking of that, I actually tried to do something about this issue, and I created a group on Facebook called Disabled Dating Ontario or something like that. And anyways, it's just it's a private, so I just have to click OK when somebody wants to join. But the whole idea is to keep it limited to people that are disabled, or supporters, allies of disabled people, and people that actually live in Canada or North America, as opposed to Germany or wherever, because it's just impossible to do the long distance thing. And if you look it up, it might be of interest to people that need something like that. It's got about 100 and something members now, or 50, or I don't know. It's growing.
Yeah.
Mostly guys, but and it's open to LGBTQIA plus whatever. Everybody's welcome.
See, and this is the part, is that sense of belonging is one of the biggest things that Maslow's hierarchy of needs talks about, that need to belong, need to be part of something. Part of the problems that we have with disability is they make it so that you can't get involved. You're excluded. You don't have enough money to go out to the city fair or this event or that event and be involved. You could go there, sure, but then the bus pass to get there, you can't afford the hot dog that's $5, the drink that's $3. That's just like, that's extreme, when it comes to being involved.
MJ, you're killing me, MJ, because there's a program here in Ontario. It's called Passport, and it's funding for people that meet certain criteria, who get funding to go and do things. It's activation funding. It's so it's like it can pay for a worker too, but it's like up to $40,000 a year in support. You can get.
I can actually speak to that because I'm on it.
Yeah, you know what I mean, Alan? Like, what do you get for technology?
It's $5,500 a month. If you need an agency to manage your passport, they take about 10% of that.
Yeah, they take a chunk of it.
Generally, you need, if you're going to do an outing or a social thing, you need someone from Passport or the agency that is representing them, which is the situation I'm on with Lean On Me. To someone, like, whether you're going bowling or you're going to go to a fair or a pride event or something. It's
see, Ontario has that.
Yeah,
and
but
you
not
also,
everybody.
the passport also
does not.
not a lot of people know this, but the passport
not.
also offers a $3,000 technology fund.
Jeez.
Now, if you have Lean On Me, they will they will. They say I wanted a lens or a keyboard, a music keyboard or something. Lean on Me would purchase it on my behalf and then bill Passport for it.
Wow.
And then I would get it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, Alan.
See, and we don't have any. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
we don't have any of that in BC.
I don't know if we have anything like that at all. I mean,
Yeah.
but if anyone
Not
actually does know
everybody-
anything about any programs like that
Yeah.
that are hidden away in BC,
Yeah.
let us know in the chat
Yeah,
or in the
please.
comments after the show.
The chat's been really active. I've been looking at it, but it's been so active. It's been hard to follow, actually, but it's been really active.
wow.
It's good.
It's been picking up a lot.
We are at the end of the show, so we can wrap up now, but it's been a good discussion.
Yeah, it's been a really good discussion today. And well, definitely on future shows, we'll be diving more into both the RGI. That's because, housing. And to keep the narrative going, I'm going to keep that narrative going that it needs to be based on the individual, not family income. Get people housed, and the long-term goal is to basically give people the option of we're doing a rent to own, right? If people want to own a home, that option should now be available rather than paying all your money to a corporate landlord who's now going to get richer and richer. And why not own it now?
The thing is that Trudeau could do that. He could technically say people with an assistance pension, be it ODSP or ADS.
Yeah, but Trudeau promised a Canada disability benefit, and he can't even figure out his right shoe from his left shoe.
Yeah. Well, that's true. But what I'm saying is,
Alan, this is why I say that maybe it's time for all of us to stand up and say, okay, we're done with waiting for you to solve the problem. We're going to do it ourselves.
Let's end the show. Crypt the vote.
Crypt the vote.
Crypt the vote.
Well, when I say he doesn't know his right shoe from his left shoe, the fact is that you could get it done right. You just get the money out. PBO.
Well, what I wanted to say is he could force the banks to accept an ODSP pension or an ASH pension as income.
Yeah.
In regards to a rent-to-own situation.
Well, here's a good example. We had a couple of our guests on, and they gave the inside scoop of what was going on. The recommendations, the high recommendations, and it seemed like they were all in agreement. The government was all in agreement, and they just decided to go a complete 360. Imagine extra $2,000 on top of the programs right now would have boosted over $3,000 in BC and Ontario. And what is it in Ontario? You guys get
about $1,300 a month.
Yeah, 13.
Well,
okay,
I'll tell you right now.
So that would have been $3,100. That would have been over 3,000 too, right? Mm-hmm. So again, that money could have been a payment down to owning your own home toward it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So again, the government knows. I have a feeling the government knows what's going on. They're just delaying it. I have a feeling they're going to delay it till next year federal. And surprise, everyone! Well, if everyone's going to be alive by then,
it's going to be a mediocre, watered down version that's just going to be like a paltry. Hey, we did something!
We did something! Yay! Look what we did!
Yeah.
We got more to do.
$200 for everyone.
$500 that we promised out of the 2,000. Good luck.
Something they could do that wouldn't ruffle too many feathers. I think would be a direct grocery card. Like if they gave us a nutrition allowance.
Yeah,
that would be awesome. Here's $200. Go buy your groceries, and it only works at grocery stores. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like a debit card that only works. I guess I'm saying like food stamps, but I don't give a shit. Give me food stamps, please.
I'd like a lot less regulation from the government, Patrick. I don't know about you, and a lot less government oversight in my life. I'd like to.
It depends. I know there are crooks, though. That's the thing.
Right, I know they're crooks too. It's like, see, the problem we have. Is it's like we were talking about this whole thing about having a relationship and the fact that, if you're living with somebody and like in Brent, your situation with your mom, one of you got to move out, you're above your X amount of money. What I'm saying is all of these rules that they've created are what are creating the hardships.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
They don't care.
Your next solution is your next problem, as they say.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I know that this isn't the perfect solution because I've said before that with UABI, up to 2 million government workers up to, and that's possibly including school teachers at a provincial level, for people deciding, I'm going to just put my kid in a private school. I don't want to be dealing with what's going on in public education anymore, right? The up to 2 million, and it's not an exact number. It's between 1 million and 2 million government workers right now. That's a lot of people. I'm telling you that
the union's going to scream about that.
The unions will scream, absolutely. But we have to accept the fact that, unfortunately, we can no longer afford to go and have workers working in PWD that take $3,000 to give us $1,500, or it costs 3 times for all the people that they deal with, 3 times the cost to administrate that one account for all of these people than it does for them to just get the money and get the people out of the way that are the administration.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, MJ, because see, next year there's going to be a new state-of-the-art computer system that's going to be able to handle huge payouts. That's what the minister said in BC.
Well, by then,
there's a huge computer system. The state-of-the-art is going to be wonderful. It can handle
and then it's going to be lean on me.
Lean on me.
See, and then by then, and this is where I'm saying, like, let's get organized. We're all, there's over 1.5 million disabled people that we can go and count right now that are listed as disabled in Canada alone. Okay. That alone, if you take a look at that, that's a lot of votes across this nation. Then you've got family, you've got relatives that would get on board, and then you have the allies and supporters that would all come on side and go, yeah, enough's enough. Right. Unfortunately, the truth is we do have too many government workers that are going in just working in jobs that are actually not designed to be there to help people anymore, but they're there just making people's lives a living hell. And
the short-term contracts that they have too.
Right, exactly. And the way
they're miserable. A lot of them are miserable in their jobs, and they take it out on us.
I had a worker one time that actually did admit that to me, and I said, "Do you like your job?" She goes, "Actually, no, I don't." Then why are you working here? She goes, "I'm actually retiring." I'm like, so you don't
I have
like
a mortgage. I have to pay it. Yeah.
Well, she said she didn't like it because of all the red tape, all the bureaucracy. And she says she agreed that the rates need to be up to like no less than like a livable income. And that was her words back then, like a livable income. I go, what is a livable income? I don't know, but yeah.
How many social workers end up working in government just to audit how many, people live in a house or whatever?
Yeah, the audits are... The audits are just so demeaning.
Well,
that's the cruel
it's punitive.
Yeah.
It's like my worker telling me that if I go over a certain threshold with my rent, regardless whether I have families helping out or not, I might be under review for having my benefits put on hold. I'm like, I'm like, am I to understand that I'm being punished for being poor?
Yeah.
And this is the problem.
Maybe your worker needs to be audited.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I asked a worker one time, if I decided to rent a spot and put a tent on it, would that count as shelter? She said yes. So, you just got to have a lease for a piece of property that you can put a tent on. It's bad. It's bad.
I saw these.
It counts for my $500 shelter.
Yeah, exactly. I saw these shelters that basically are blow-up shelters that they're talking about. That they're talking about giving out to the homeless down in the States. And right, it's kind of like a blow-up tent, really, is what it is.
A bouncy castle. We all get bouncy castles.
That sounds like fun, actually.
Pink unicorn smokes to bouncy castles, but things are getting better.
The bouncy castle with USB ports.
Anyway, we should punch out.
Yeah.
But,
all right, everyone. I thank everyone for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed the content today. Reach out if you have a lived experience story that you want to share with us. Definitely reach out to me or myself, and we'll get you scheduled in. Again, our GI housing, it needs to be based on the individual, not the family unit. We'll get people housed across British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario. I'll keep going all the way across the whole nation, right? Everyone deserves housing. Let's get them housed.
Everybody deserves love too.
Exactly. Everyone deserves love. I mean, autonomy, right? Everything. Yeah. So we definitely reach out to us. We'll get you on the show. If you like the content that you're basically seeing or hearing, if you want to subscribe, please do so. If you want to be a donor, help us out with the show. All the above. All the above. Reach out to us. Thank you very
Like,
much.
share, and subscribe, and share.
Like,
and
share, and subscribe. Yeah, that's it.
yeah, exactly. And you know, and here's the thing: is share with other friends and family that also might be disabled or have a friend or family member that they know of that is disabled. Because here's the thing: we're trying to build a community here, folks. We truly are, and it's bigger than just our little, our ideas. We want to bring people together because we need to solve this problem that Brent's been talking about longer than I've been here, and Neil and everyone else. This needs to be resolved, and we can no longer just quietly just stand by and say disabled people are last on the concern of our government.
Yeah,
and that's the way they treat us.
Yeah.
Nicely said, MJ.
And if you're out there and you become disabled, guess what? Come on board.
Welcome to the club.
It's gonna, yeah.
You'll
It's gonna matter the more people.
you'll also be disregarded by your government.
See ya.
Thanks.
Yeah, take care, everybody.